guys, it's your boy Gsluke here for our round 2 prize picks targets for this week's Masters tournament. And oh boy, were our round 1 picks fire. We ended up hitting 4 for 4, maybe even 5 for 5, depending on what lines you were able to hit throughout the week. I ended up hitting 4 of them in my personal card, so a 7.5x payout for over $750 profit. Just entered a $100 flex play like I usually do for each round, and this time ended up hitting out big. So hopefully a ton of you guys out there ended up tailing, also hitting out for some of this profit. In terms of the prop review, ended up hitting the under at 4.5 for Cam Smith on hole number 8. The best par 5 score came through for us, and yet another scenario. Also had the under on Bryson at 12 greens in regulation, only ended up hitting 10 on the day. So even if you had the 11 number, which it did fall throughout the week, you also ended up hitting that there. A few of the other props we had Tiger Woods under 73.5. Of course, the GOAT came through for us, ended up shooting 1 under par. And also we had Patrick Reed over 72 strokes, which he shot 74, which means even if you had the 73.5 number, which ended up coming out later in the week, you also ended up hitting the over. So a lot of movement with the props that I gave out. Of course, the sooner you get on here, the sooner you get and listen to this content, the fresher the lines are going to be, so you can get them before they move. And the only push we had was Taylor Gooch. He ended up shooting 72 today, had a bogey on 17 that was all that costly, but ended up pushing for us. But a lot of you out there were able to get a line at 73 and ended up moving in the opposite direction, which is the only time I can remember that ever happening with a pick I gave here on the channel. So ended up working out for the best this week. So a ton of you hit for 12.5x value. I hit for 7.5x. Pretty happy about it, but looking to get back at it once again. So let's go ahead and hop right on into it here with our picks here for round 2. All right, to start off, a quick review of what we saw today. And at the Masters, we saw a more difficult set of conditions than usual. Played to 1.83 strokes over par, which is right around 0.8 of a stroke harder per round than what we're used to seeing. A lot of that was due to the wet conditions that we had in Augusta, Georgia. Over the last 2 days, there were a ton of thunderstorms in the area. And as a result, we had a much longer golf course. Now, not on the scorecard, of course, it was still just right around 7,500 yards, but it played closer to 7,700 or even 7,800 yards. So you had a lot of the longer hitters have some success out there. It's not a surprise to see that pretty much everybody in the top 10 here is a relatively long hitter. Maybe the only exception is a Danny Willett, who still gets it out there a pretty good distance. So of course, distance, like we expected going into the week, was a factor that we wanted to look at. And in terms of the weather, we're going to get even more difficult conditions here for the second round. You can see in the morning, we have 5 to 10 mile an hour sustained winds, which isn't all that bad. But as soon as midday, it gets to the 13 to 15 mile an hour sustained rate and will continue at that for the rest of the day. Now, the real kicker here, of course, are the gusts, where you're going to have 20 to 30 mile an hour gusts for most of the day as well. And particularly for the guys that are teeing off towards midday or even towards the afternoon, they're going to be in some brutal conditions. So in general, I'm favoring the players that are playing towards the morning. And of course, there's always inherent value in playing in the morning on the PGA Tour when you're dealing with softer greens, more pristine greens because they were cut overnight. You don't have all those spike marks on them. So you're going to see the guys playing in the morning a little bit better than they do in the afternoon, and especially so with this type of a wind differential between the waves there. So with all that being said, what are the props that I'm looking at here for round 2? So we're going to start with greens in regulation with 2 of our fades. And like most of the cards that I put up here, it's going to be a 5-leg card, a 5-leg flex play, where I'm taking 3 overs and 2 stands against players. And the 2 stands that I'm taking against are going to be on greens in regulation, and it's going to be 2 of the elite tier players that are also teeing off in the afternoon, those being Cameron Smith and also Joaquin Niemann. Both are at the top of the board in terms of their projections, and quite frankly, neither one is an elite level iron player. Both of them are well above average. That's why they're some of the best players in the world, both top 30 in the official world golf rankings. But the issue for Cam Smith is that he can be extremely inconsistent with the approach play. And Joaquin Niemann, even though he gains in bunches with the approach play, he misses his fair share of greens from time to time. He can be very inconsistent, much like a Cameron Smith, maybe slightly more consistent than Cameron Smith, but in general, I have them both projected for well below their numbers. So let's start with Cameron Smith. I have him projected for 11.5 greens in regulation. First off, the average here at this course is right around 11.8, 11.9. So just factoring in his pure projection without wind, it'd be right around 12.8, 12.9. So I'd be spot on with prize picks if wind wasn't a factor for tomorrow. But again, we have 15 mile an hour sustained winds and 20 to 30 mile an hour wind gusts. That's ridiculous wind. You're going to see a scoring average of maybe 2.5, 3 over par tomorrow. So guys like Cameron Smith, even though they are some of the best players in the world, they're going to miss more than 5 greens. It's going to be extremely tough. Cameron Smith, he's great at getting up and down. He's one of the best short game players in the world, so perhaps he's still able to go low, right, because he's able to save a lot of those pars, but I don't see him hitting all of his greens. So somebody I'm taking the under on and feeling pretty confident about it. And same thing with Joaquin Niemann, right? He's also teeing off in the afternoon. He's a 141 tee time. The issue is very similar with Cameron Smith, and even though he's a solid iron player, he's going to miss 5 or 6 greens at the very least. It's just very tough when you have those windy conditions. And for Joaquin Niemann, somebody that I'm taking a stand against here for the second round. And now for the guys that we're playing, the guys that we expect to have a solid round, you can see that they're all teeing off in the morning. And the category that I'm looking at here is going to be birdies or better, and just the best players in the world. You can see the guys at the top of the board are priced at 4.5. You can see Cameron Smith, DJ, priced up at 4.5, but most of them at 4, and then the rest of the board is at 3.5. So even the guys like Patrick Reed, Billy Horschel, Justin Rose are priced at 3.5 birdies or better. And then you have guys like Rory McIlroy, Colin Morikawa, and then Brooks Koepka that are all teeing off in the morning as well. So of course they're getting the better of the conditions with less wind in the morning. It'll also be a little bit softer, be able to throw more darts there for maybe 10 to 11 a.m. for these guys, and more pristine greens. So a bunch of reasons why I like playing all 3 of these guys. We'll go one by one just to talk about the skill set. Of course, Rory McIlroy, he might not be the best in majors in round 1. In fact, over his last 20 starts in majors in round 1, he's 34 over par. So averages 1 or 2 over par in those rounds. Did that same exact thing once again today, but always finds himself in contention. So I'm expecting a huge bounce back here. And because we're taking birdies are better and not strokes, we can have a blow up hole or 2, right? You can still shoot 1-2 under par and get to 3 or 4 birdies. So I like that number there a lot. Brooks Koepka at 3.5 birdies I also like because the ball striking, particularly on the front 9, was excellent. He was 2 under par through his first 9 holes, was well up there on the leaderboard, and then completely fell apart. Not sure what went on with it. His off the tee play got a little bit hairy, but if anybody's going to figure it out, it's going to be Brooks Koepka, particularly because he's 3 over par. It needs to shoot under par to make the cut and make a run at this thing over the weekend. He's by far the best player in major championships, at least over the last 3 years. If you take a look at shots gained, he's just the best player in the field in that category. And lastly, we have Colin Morikawa at 3.5 birdies. I like the iron play. I like the fact that he's really sharp off the tee, and the putter has been a huge bright spot for him of late. Of course, he's not the most consistent putter on tour, but over this season, or at least the last 2 to 3 months, he's been much better than average. So if he can tune into that approach play, which he typically has, he's usually able to rely on that, but of late it's been the putter that he's relying on. He could very easily take it to 4 or 5 birdies. So somebody that I'm also comfortable taking there, teeing off in the morning with those soft conditions, and also needs to make a splash, right? He shot even par today, needs to post something low to go ahead and put himself in contention. That's all I've got here for the Prize Picks preview. Before you go on and get out of here, go ahead and let me know what your favorite prop on the board is, whether it's something that I mentioned or completely off my radar. Would love to hear from you guys, so make sure you go ahead and comment that below. And if you ended up winning with yesterday's picks, go ahead and let me know down below how much you ended up winning. I, of course, hope you guys ended up tailing, taking home quite a bit of profit there like myself. So I would love to hear from you guys down below. I appreciate you. If you guys haven't already subscribed, make sure you go ahead and do so you don't miss any of the content I'm coming out with in the future. We'll have you covered for round 3, round 4 prize picks. I have DFS content I'm posting here constantly on the channel for all the golf tournaments. Also, make sure you like the video if you haven't already. Again, I really appreciate all of the support here, and I'll see you guys next time. Best of luck with all of your cards.